Welcome to another episode of Legislative Lens, People and Policy. As we celebrate Women's History Month, we're taking time to reflect not only on the trailblazers who paved the way before us, but also on the women who lead, organize, and shape policy right now, here in Massachusetts and in our communities. Women's History Month is about honoring progress, recognizing the work still ahead, and lifting up the voices of women who are driving meaningful change. In today's episode, we'll explore how women are working together across government and community organizations to advance equity, opportunity, and representation. In the first half of the episode, we'll be joined by Representative Christine Barber, State Representative for the 34th Middlesex District, Chair of the Joint Committee on Environmental and Natural Resources, and Co-Chair of the Massachusetts Caucus of Women Legislators. Representative Barber has been a strong advocate for the environment, economic opportunity, educational equity, and policies that support women and families across the Commonwealth. We'll talk about the mission and priorities of the caucus, how women legislators collaborate across regions and perspectives, and what they've been working on during the first half of this legislative session to move meaningful legislation forward. In the second half of the episode, we turn our focus to local leadership, like with Michelle Davidson, chair of the Plymouth County Commission on the Status of Women. The commission works to advance the rights and opportunities of women and girls in Plymouth County. Michelle brings a deep commitment to advocacy and community building, and she'll share how the commission partners with residents and organizations and state leaders to ensure that women's voices are heard at every level. From Beacon Hill to Plymouth County, today's conversation highlights how collaboration, advocacy, and leadership are making a difference for women and families across the Commonwealth. I'm excited to dive into this important discussion. Happy Women's History Month, and welcome to the podcast, Representative Barber. Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
So, I start every episode with a bit of a level setting to make sure that people understand what we're here, what the point is. We're going to be talking about caucuses today and what caucuses look like and the different kinds of caucuses we have and focusing on the Massachusetts Caucus of Women Legislators. But can you just start off to kind of explaining what, the point of exactly is a caucus in the legislature, in the context?
Sure. So there are different types of caucuses in the legislature. It really is just a group of legislators. So there's the Democratic or the Republican caucus, which is obviously all the members of that party who decide to caucus together. And then there also are caucuses the Criminal Justice Reform Caucus, which is just a group of legislators who care about a particular issue. The Women's Caucus is a little different, where it is a formal caucus of all women legislators, both House and Senate. It is bipartisan as well. And it is a formal caucus where we actually have a staff person and have been formally running now for 50 years.
Awesome. Now, for caucuses, I found them really helpful myself. I think it gives you an opportunity to kind of dive into a specific topic. When we talk about like you said, the criminal justice, there's housing, there's just an opportunity. Coastal. Yeah. There's a higher ed caucus. What subject are you interested in, or what subject do you want to know more about? And there's, the like-minded, different, like you said, there's the Democrats, the Republicans, and we have a progressive caucus, and there's just different ways to kind of learn and shape your ideas and how you kind of perceive the work that we're doing at the State House. So what other caucus, what purposes do you feel like a caucus fills?
I find that it can both be, like you said, a way to get information and to find, particular issues that affect your district. So for instance, if you have a coastal community, the Coastal Caucus is a way to come together and say, okay, these are affecting our communities. For the Women's Caucus, it's a little bit different because the Women's Caucus is, as I said, bipartisan and bicameral, and it's a very broad caucus. So we don't necessarily all share the same view. We're from literally, from the Cape to the Berkshires, everywhere in between. And that caucus, it is really about coming together to make sure we're hearing the voices of women and girls across the whole Commonwealth and working together on some of the issues that we all care about. So in that case, it's a little different, where it is all of the women trying to work together in that
I know,
group.
I've really enjoyed that, getting to know people in that way. Through the Women's Caucus, I think we have the events that really inform, events that really allow us to get to know each other, which is really helpful. What was the reasoning behind forming I know we just celebrated the 50th anniversary, and, there was a little bit of discussion about how the Women's Caucus was formed, now working on our 51st year, right? So can you tell us a little bit about that, the reasoning behind the formation of the caucus?
Yeah, so we just, as you said, celebrated our 50th year last year. And so now it's actually the longest continuously running bipartisan, bicameral women's caucus in the whole country, which is really cool, and I'm very proud of that. So the history of it is in 1975, there were 14 actually House members who got together. They were focused on the Equal Rights Amendment at that time. That was their main goal. And then second, they actually just wanted to get women together. Again, they were Republicans and Democrats. They were from all over the state, urban and rural districts, and decided that women needed to come together to have more of a voice. So they blazed the trail. Of course, women have been serving in Massachusetts since the first women were elected in the 1920s, but in the 70s, there was finally a critical mass of women who came together to form the caucus.
And what, like, brave souls to be in the 1920s to do it, as well as, even in the 70s coming together and making that decision that, we need to hear more women's voices and make sure that the issues so important to them are heard. When you think about the number of males who have served, I can't remember the number. Was it 340?
Yeah, so there's been, Massachusetts has a very old constitution. And so there's been 400 years actually of Massachusetts government, even before we're older than the country. So the numbers are that in that time, there have been over 20,000 male representatives and senators, and there have been 243 actually women. So 243 women compared to many, many thousands of men. So most of us, we went through last year, everyone's number, right? So I was the 188th woman elected. I was the first woman in my district, and I was elected in 2015. So we've added a lot of women in just the last decade, but we still have a long way to go. And reminding how important it is to work together on supporting women in government and women at all levels of our communities.
I think that 20,000 number was the most shocking thing to me. I think that was shared. I was like, 20,000, and then we've got less than 300. I thought that, the caucus did the social media where they had each person for each day of the year, and then coming to the point where you're like, oh, we don't have any more women that have served. We're not even to the end of the year. We can't even cover every day of a year. And, so hopefully in the future, we will be able to do that. Hopefully it won't take that long to get to that number. We'll have somebody for every year. But it just was mind-boggling, 20,000. So can you tell us also, like, the structure? I know the Women's Caucus has more structure than some caucuses. I'm in the other, or what I've seen in other caucuses, in the subject-based caucuses, there's a chair and a vice chair. But in the Women's Caucus, it gives people more opportunity to get involved in the workings.
Yeah, so we do. Thank you. Yeah, we have bylaws in the Women's Caucus that is a little bit more structure than some other caucuses have. As I said, we're a formal caucus. We are very lucky to have a staff person dedicated to the caucus, which is kind of unusual. Only the Women's Caucus and the Black and Latino Caucus, I believe, have a dedicated staff person. So the structure we have, so I'm a co-chair on the House side. We also, Senator Kennedy is the co-chair on the Senate side. She's from Worcester and is a great partner. So I'm really glad to co-chair with her. And then we elect a board, which we have vice chairs on the House and Senate side. We have a treasurer, and then we have a number of at-large members from all over the state and representing different, communities. So the board meets regularly and sets, the priorities generally for the caucus. So that's one piece, is our board, but then we set every session. So folks listen to this podcast know our legislative session is 2 years. So at the beginning of the 2-year session, usually in January, we elect the board, but then we also decide our priorities. So we start at strategic priorities. So rather than just jumping into what bills do we care about, we try to go higher level to what broad issues do we care about. And we talk about that as the entire caucus, not just the board, but really have a conversation with the whole caucus. which is currently 60 members. So there are 60 women legislators in the House and Senate, again, Republicans and Democrats all working together. So we set our priorities, and then from there we pick bills and we work on bills.
So we all know that we're looking at policy and we're taking a deep look on like what legislation. In the beginning of every session, those who listen know that there's basically 2 weeks that you have to just get all of the legislation that you're interested in. And then the different caucuses will take on different pieces and different legislation to really push and make it like their legislative priority. And so what can you share some of the priorities of the Women's Caucus during this session?
Yeah. So again, the way we started it, just to explain further, is so we set strategic priorities, which are broad issues. So for this session, we decided addressing health equity and racial and gender health disparities is one priority. Elevating women's economic opportunity is a second, and then empowering women in government is one of our general priorities. So those are our 3 top priorities. So then within them, we then ask members of the caucus to put forth bills that fit within those priorities that they're working on and are prioritizing. So it really comes from kind of the bottom up of the caucus members saying, hey, I have a bill about women's economic opportunity, which means a lot of different things, or racial and health disparities. So from that, we then come up with a list and members vote on the list. So our goal is always that we're all working together and really try to agree on priorities, even though we're coming from really different places. So from that, we have 5 kind of top priorities and then a number of, we call endorsed bills or kind of secondary priorities. So I'll go through the 5, not the endorsed because there's too many. But for health disparities, we are focusing on, there's a perinatal behavioral health trust fund. So we did a lot of work on maternal health last session. We worked on a big maternal health bill that passed. And part of that we really focused on was on mental health for postpartum and postpartum women. So this is kind of the next phase where we're trying to build a workforce to make sure that women can actually find providers for perinatal behavioral health. So that is one of our top priorities. An act reducing incidence and death from pancreatic cancer. So that pancreatic cancer is on the rise among women and especially women of color. So that is one that we're focused on this year. And then access to menstrual products was actually my bill, which is to make sure that menstrual products are available in schools, also shelters and jails. Our priority on the economic opportunity lane is about a livable wage for human service workers. So these are workers who are usually supporting people with disabilities or seniors in our communities. It is both a workforce that is mostly women of color who are doing that work, but also, as we know, care of family members often falls on women and impacts women's ability to work full-time work if you don't have human service workers. And then finally, our priority on the empowering women of government is an act relative to gender neutral language in election laws. This one seems simple, but is actually really impactful and is changing things. So the laws, as listeners might know, are really outdated, where all the election laws use he and kind of male language. So chairman, select man, all of the leadership roles are gendered, based on he, gendered, and he, him pronouns. So we are making those gender neutral just in election laws to make a statement about who actually does run for office.
And that's so important. I know that was one of the things when I was on the school committee, push to make sure that everything we have is not gendered. And so, obviously they find things every now and again, but the push was to get rid of those gendered terms. Nobody needs to be chairman. You can just be chair or chairperson or whatever you need to be. Or when we refer to he, it could be they. There's no need for it. And it's such an important thing that we need to do. And you also mentioned one other thing about building on one piece of legislation from last session to another. And that's something that, we talk about here. I talk about my social media about the fact that things aren't always perfect the first time they come out. And sometimes they're done purposefully that way. It's so, well, maybe not purposefully, but you can get one piece of it done and then you can get another piece. And so it's so important that people that are listening understand that just when one bill comes out, it's not the perfect ending. It's not the end all be all. It's the start of a conversation. That's what I like to say and tell people,
Exactly. And definitely on maternal health. We know that there's so much that's needed there. And we were really proud to work on that bill, but there's more to do. So we were glad to prioritize kind of the next phase. And just to say these priorities, obviously there's so many more issues affecting women and families in our Commonwealth, but these were the ones that have a lot of support. We all voted and were able to come to basically consensus to support these as our priorities this session. And I'll say last year we passed 4 out of 5 of our priorities and a number of our endorsed bills, and we've had really good success. So working together has been a real benefit.
It makes all the difference. I mean, to have each other and to focus. I mean, like you can't focus on every bill. There's 7,000 plus bills out there. So it's important to have priorities and understanding, if we do this, then we're moving certain things forward. So no, it's a really meaningful difference, the work that you do in the caucus as a leader, or as one of the 2 co-chair leaders of that. Now, why do you think it's important to have, we've kind of already hit on it a little bit, but to have these issue-based or subject area-based caucuses, like to have like a broader kind of look at what we're doing as a whole? Because so many times I don't know, it can be overwhelming. I don't know about you, but there's so many topics coming at you that it can be overwhelming. And that's what I find helpful in a caucus.
Absolutely. So in my district, I have a really civically engaged district where people care about a lot of things and coming at me on, this about climate or this about an economic issue or so many different things. And that's great. I really love the input. And like you said, there are thousands and thousands of bills filed. And the best way to get them passed is by working together and really organizing and prioritizing on the ones you really want. So the caucuses are a great way to do that and say, okay, here's a bill that maybe I didn't really know about, but there's a lot of energy. It's going to help my constituents and I'm hearing about it, and let me get involved and figure out how to help pass it. That is the way to get legislation done. And I think we've shown that in the Women's Caucus by getting a bunch of our priorities passed. Last year, we also passed a bill on pay equity and salary range transparency to help address the gender wage gap. That is an issue we've revisited a few times as a caucus. Like you said, we passed a bill a few years ago. It was great. It was a good step. There was so much more to do to address the wage gap between women and men. And we took a next step last year, which we were proud of. And it was a way that we were able to all come together to actually get that passed. And it really did mean a lot that the caucus was behind it and that a number of legislators were working together. So that's what I find helpful in a caucus, is kind of organizing people together on particular bills that we need to get
And as
passed.
a new legislator, I think it shows me the process a little bit better. Sometimes it can be overwhelming as to how the processes work. Like, how many times can you ask somebody where your bill stands before they, get a little annoyed at you? Or like, how does that all work? And so it's been helpful there. And, I think we're doing this podcast in March because it's Women's History Month. And I think there's so much to be said from the leadership of you and so many others about building on the legacy of women before us. And how do you think that the Women's Caucus itself is able to build on that legacy of people before us and what you hope to leave for other women who come behind you?
Yeah. And for me, that's actually personal. So a little bit of my story was that I was a staffer in the state house, and before I was elected, many years before I was elected, but I worked for 2 different women legislators who were Rep. Ann Paulson and Rep. Pat Walrath, just to shout them out. They were incredible mentors to me about how to do this work and how to listen to constituents, and were really fierce advocates for their communities and their priorities. So it is personal to learn from women who came
Mhm.
before us and were mentors. And also we're doing this work at a time where fewer women were in office and they didn't have the same role models that I have had, and really seeing that. And I'm grateful for women who came before. And one of our activities in the 50th anniversary last year, we did a number of different events to mark the 50th, but honestly, my favorite one was when we brought back all of the women legislators who were able to come. We invited every women legislator. And we had, I
There
don't know
was a
how
lot.
many, we had a lot, like
At
100
least,
people
yeah.
there. It was really incredible. And again, from Republican, Democrat, all over the state. Some came in. So my old boss, Rep. Paulson, is in Minneapolis now with her
Oh,
family, and she came in for it. So people
yep.
who flew in, for this event, and it was so wonderful to be in that room with this group of women who had really worked on so many issues and laid the groundwork. And then also, as we've been talking about work with young people and sort of the next
Mm,
generation and trying to be mentors to our interns and our staff who are have such great energy and ideas, and seeing kind of the promise of what comes
mm.
next and being able to kind of be the bridge as a caucus to both
I
of those
agree. I mean,
things.
I'm a women's college grad, and so it means a lot to me. I mean, obviously, it's not the end all be all, but I feel like women who come together and women who work together we're a powerful force. I mean, we've seen that in so many different labor movements, and on a totally another subject, just watched a movie called Lead Children, and the women are the reason that these kids who were being poisoned, lead poisoning was the only reason that they were able to get out of the area that they were living in. And I think that women are strong when they come together, and it's really important to be that bridge, as you call it, that bridge to the next generation. I know with my interns, it's some of them are not interested in politics whatsoever, or they're interested in certain parts of it, but it's showing them that they're, regardless of what they do, that they can do whatever they want. And I think that's what's really important. And I loved that event that everyone put together for that 50th anniversary. It was just getting to meet so many people who had been there, some people who had one term and people who had been there for decades, and what their kind of experiences were, and just how excited they were all to be back. I think that sisterhood was really clear. You saw people who were in the same class with each other really came together, and were not in the same class, but were there when they were together in the house. It was just really inspirational to be there. So thank you for all your work on that, and so many other people's work on putting that together.
Yeah, it was a wonderful event, and it was a lot of, I mean, thankfully, I said we have an amazing staff person who put a lot of it together, and our interns who worked with her, but it was a lot
Yes.
of work for all of us to put that together. And sort of because it was such a great event, for better or worse, I've been getting a lot of push of like,
Do it again.
we should do this
Yes.
year. This was wonderful. And I'm like, oh, okay, maybe we'll get a group together to help plan
Yeah.
it, because I don't want, yeah, it was a lot to do, but it was really a
Yeah.
wonderful event. And I agree, people who had served together or had never met and said, I've
Yeah.
heard of
Yep.
you, I'm able to meet you. And in a place, again, where we have a lot of great allies in the legislature, but it's still only about
Mhm.
31% of the body are women. So coming together like that is really important to support the issues that we
Yeah,
care
no,
about.
couldn't agree more. All right, I know you've got a big day ahead of you. The one thing we always like to talk about in this podcast, and if we can do it really quickly, is how constituents can find out more about the caucus and how they can get involved in the issues that the caucus is working on. Because for me, that's why we do this podcast. That's why we do what we do, is getting people's voices into the larger conversation.
Yeah, so thank you for asking that. And we have a really great social
Hmm.
media um, page or social media feeds that we have. So we're on Instagram and on Facebook, I believe, are the
Yeah, I think so.
only two. Facebook. And then you can also find us. Our website is MA Women's Caucus, all one word.com. And there's actually a ton of information on the website about the caucus history, the current members, and our priorities, most
Yes.
importantly. So, what we're working on, and a little bit about how you could get involved in what we're working on. But I'd say certainly on Instagram and Facebook, you can keep up with both some stats about women in history, but more likely the priorities and then how we're moving on our priorities. So check us out. If you just search for us on Instagram, Mass Caucus of Women Legislators, or Facebook, you'll find us and follow. Because we do try to really connect with people in the state. That is part of our work, is, not just doing our work, of course, with our constituents individually, but also kind of being outward facing about the work that women are doing in the legislature.
The social media presence, I think, is really powerful, and the website is good as well with all the information. So, yes, do follow. It's interesting. I follow it to, sometimes they're like, oh, that's happening, or this day is, or somebody did this really great thing on this day and you don't know about it. And so it's been really helpful. And I just want to thank you so much, Representative Barber, for being here today, for being on the podcast, and just for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak with us. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me and for talking about caucuses generally, but especially the work of the Women's Caucus. I think during Women's History Month, I am always wanting to talk about women who came before and the amazing groundwork to get us to support where we are today. And we know there's so much more to do. So just honoring, women who came before, but also the work that we're all doing to try to get the needs met for the next
generation. All about uplifting. So thank you. Thank you. While the caucus works at the State House to advance legislation and support women in public office, the work is strengthened by advocacy and leadership happening at the local level. Real change happens when state policy and community voices are connected. In the second half of our episode, we're shifting our focus from Beacon Hill to Plymouth County to explore how advocacy for women and girls that is happening right here in our own community. I'm so pleased to welcome Michelle Davidson, Chair of the Plymouth County Commission on the Status of Women. Thank you for joining us and being able to take time here. Today, we're going to talk about the role of the commission, the issues facing women and girls locally, and how community-driven advocacy helps inform and strengthen the work happening at the state level. Michelle, welcome to the podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here. I feel very privileged to have been invited to join
no,
you.
We've got Women's History Month, and who else would I ask? It's perfect. The whole point of this this podcast is to really take, as I said, things that are happening in Beacon Hill to what's happening right here locally, and how people locally can get involved. And so I'm just thrilled that people want to be a part of this podcast. And so I'm thrilled that you're interested too. So thank you. Yeah. So we like to start all of our podcasts with kind of a local. We like to start with a level setting so that everyone kind of understands what topic we're talking about. Because some people know what the Plymouth County Commission on Status of Women is. Other people don't. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Actually, a lot of people don't know who we are. Since I became chair, it's improved. But still, a lot of people do not know who we are, and they're always amazed that these commissions exist. But this commission was established in March of 2018. It was part of legislation, Chapter 45 of the Acts of 2018. So that legislation made it possible to form regional commissions on the status of women and girls. And prior to that, the state had only the Massachusetts Commission on the Status of Women, which was established in 1998. So for us, for the Plymouth County, probably the other chairs of the other regionals think the same way, but I think of us as the eyes and ears for all women and girls in the county. So as we go about our lives, wherever we live, we're paying attention to what women and girls say and do. Input comes from the people we are with daily, such as our family, friends, and coworkers, but also we hear and observe what goes on, as we go about our days. In addition to that, we hold listening sessions. They're in person and virtual, where we invite women and girls to give testimony and share their challenges or the challenges of the organization or group they belong to. So we also, in addition to that, we also table at events such as one we did last year, was the South Shore Conference for Women, where we talk with attendees and the panelists, and we get to hear what their challenges are and also tell them about ourselves. But then we use that information to guide us in the legislation that we advocate for and in deciding the programs that we produce. So it's two parts. It's listening, hearing, and then taking that information and applying it in two different ways, usually through legislation or through programs throughout the Commonwealth.
I'm a women's college grad, and so the issues of women are close to my heart. I think they're close to every woman's heart. But for me, I wear this pinky ring every day to remind me of the sisterhood that I have from my undergrad. And so the work you do is really important to uplift, because so often women, girls, they're not often uplifted, and we're lucky that Massachusetts puts such a strong kind of support framework over that. Can you tell us a little how the local group works with our state? In 1998, the state was formed, and then we were formed later than that. How does that that relationship go back and forth?
Sure. So first, Plymouth County Commission is one of 11 regional commissions across the Commonwealth. Each commission, each regional has their own programming and legislative priorities. So we've been doing Plymouth County, we've been doing our own programming. And we decide our priorities at the start of each legislative session. But we also work with the Massachusetts Commission to help advance their priorities and help with their events. So they have a much longer list of legislative priorities that we will help support them with. And then they have events of their own throughout the year, one of which is the Commonwealth Heroines Honors. And they also have the Girls Empowerment Leadership Initiative, which we call Jelly. So we help with their programs, we help with their advocacy, we help spread the word about what they do. And then the regional commissioners also work together on projects and events. For example, for Plymouth County, we partnered with the Bristol County Commission in 2024 to produce an event about Black maternal health. And then each regional commission receives funding via grant from the state to help with its programs and events. So it's really a mutual relationship. So we get assistance and guidance from the Massachusetts level, and then we help them with their programming and their initiatives and support them as they do their work around the state.
I mean, I have to imagine that doing the work that you all do is so large, and having those conversations, the issues are so important. And there's different issues around different parts of the state, which had to be complex when it was just one Massachusetts commission. It seems like unwieldy.
Yes. Yeah. I mean, I listened in on it's a listening session or where women and girls get to give testimony. And this one took place in the Berkshires, western part of the state. And I attend them just to hear what's going on. Maybe there's an issue that applies also to us in Plymouth County, but they had an issue I had not even considered. And it had to do with sexual assault. And getting health care after an assault. And sometimes they go out of state for that. So they're having a problem with helping these women who go for care out of state. And now we're not in Plymouth County. It's not easy to go to another state to go get care, but that's an issue that they specifically have because they're so close to the Vermont border, this one community. So anyway, there's different issues in different parts of the state. And when you have voices from the different regionals, you can give those to the Massachusetts level, to the state level, and then that helps.
And then it amplifies because, and then if you are listening, you can say, "Ooh, we have that same concern. Maybe we should." We've got human trafficking, a big issue too. We've got maternal health, but and what are the different overlapping things? So you don't have to recreate a wheel. I mean, we always say if there's an event or something or anything that works in one community, why not just copy paste in another that to make it? I mean, there's no round peg in a square hole. You can't take one complete event, but you can take the idea and how did it work and build on it to make it work for Plymouth County versus Berkshires or wherever you might be. But no, that's a great kind of team effort to kind of go back. As a commissioner, can you explain your role? You said that you listen and bring it back. Do you, when you're interacting with the Massachusetts Commission and legislators, how, what do you feel that your key responsibilities are? How are you kind of pushing your needs forward?
Yeah, so like you said, we listen, and we're also women ourselves, so we naturally pay attention to what's happening on the county level as well as the state and national level, because even issues higher up will often impact us locally. And then the local issues will impact the efforts in, for state. So for example, if all regional commissions, like we were just saying, are hearing about the same issue, that will become a priority for the Massachusetts Commission. An example of that is it's had statewide focus for years is
Oh,
period
yes.
poverty. So that's been a top issue for us. And once again, I think this is the third legislative term that we're trying to get this
Third.
legislation
Wow.
passed. The bill's called the I
Yep.
Am bill, and it would make it possible to have free menstrual supplies in public schools, correctional facilities, and homeless shelters.
It's Christine
So
Barber's bill,
we
right? Chair
are,
Barber's bill. We were just talking to her.
yes, yes, it is. Yes.
That's a
a great
perfect segue.
segue.
It's like we planned
Forgot
it.
about that. Yeah.
But so what other issues are you
So,
working on?
yes.
Sorry to interrupt you on that one. The important issues that face Plymouth County.
Yeah, let me just back up. So we had a listening session in 2024. And a listening session, I think I might have already said this, is where we invite women and girls to come and share issues important to them, challenges that they're facing or their group is facing. And a few things came out of that we decided to make a priority. One is Black
Yep.
maternal health. So we've had one event on that. Another is caregiving challenges. Another is working in male-dominated industries, and another is human trafficking. So from that listening session and those topics that came about, I mentioned the Black maternal health. With that program we did with Bristol County, and it included a segment from the film Aftershock. If you've ever haven't seen this movie,
No, I
I
haven't.
highly recommend it. It is a great and emotional film about what Black women go through when pregnant and delivering, and even post-delivery. So from that, after that, we had a panel discussion including an assistant commissioner for health equity from the Massachusetts Department of Public Health. We had Lisa Field from the Massachusetts Nurses Association, who is now a state rep. We had a doula, a social worker, and a father whose partner had experienced issues. It was just an amazingly impactful event. But also, and then from that listening session, we had an event about women in the trades, and which gave high school and middle school age girls an opportunity to talk to women who are working these jobs. So they got to hear firsthand what it's like to work in those jobs, the career paths they took, the training that was needed. In terms of the caregiving subject, one of our legislative priorities is it's called an act relative to family members serving as caregivers.
Yes.
So that's one of our bills that we're advocating for. And if that passes, it'll allow family members, power of attorney, adult children of patients, and other legally liable family to be compensated for their care. And now we're beginning to work on an event about human trafficking. It's been a topic several of us have been wanting to do, and we're pulling together, the who, what, where, when, and how to put on that
And that's
event.
so important because I think so often people think Plymouth County, we don't have that problem, but we do have that problem. It is a significant problem, in fact. And
It's Plymouth County has the highest number.
And I think it shocks.
I was
It
shocked.
shocks people. But it is, it's a problem that we need to address. And so thank you for doing that. And it was really disappointing. I missed the event for women in trades. My goddaughter is, she will be one day a brilliant woman in the trades. She is, she's, in high school right now, and unfortunately didn't get into any of the tech schools because of the way everything functions. And she's not from Plymouth. I
It's
should
so
be clear.
hard to get into those schools.
It's very hard. And they just did, I know they just had their first, Aggie had their first lottery the other day. And that, we're seeing how that works. And that can be a whole nother episode about the lottery and how we're picking how kids can get into vocational programs.
There is hope, though. I mean, even after I was talking with one of the women who was representing a training program, I was like, do I go into construction now? Because this sounds really good.
And there's this
program sounds
and
excellent.
that sisterhood and that strength and that working together is right there. It is amazing. I was actually at the AFL-CIO had a Women's History Month celebration at JFK the other day, and they invited some of us, and it was a very inspirational speaker about women's role in the labor movement from before women were they were in laboring careers and they were in factories and things like that, but they were kind of a non-entity, but they were the important entity, but people considered them a non-entity. But yeah, no, it's so important. And I really appreciate you doing all of those events and activities and making sure that people know about these important issues. And I know we've had several conversations in Plymouth when I was on Plymouth No Place for Hate, now Plymouth for All, focused on human trafficking. I think we had an event many years ago about human trafficking. And so being able to build on something and do something countywide and really get that out there to make people aware is so important. So thank you for doing that. And I know there are long-term and short-term goals. Clearly, we've talked about how there are some of these policies you've been working on for 6 years, 3 legislative cycles, if not more. How do you find that, how do you find that you balance your short and your long term? I mean, I think everyone knows that there's a long term component to most things. Nothing is, we were talking about it earlier with Christine Barber, Chair Christine Barber, and it, basically about the fact that that's how the world works, right? We have a short term priority trying to get something, and just because a piece of legislation passes doesn't mean it's the end to a conversation. It could be the beginning or the middle. We're always moving forward.
Right. Yeah, so I would say our long-term goal is the passage of our legislative priorities. And as you know, getting a bill passed is a long process with many steps along the way, and it could get stalled. So we keep an eye on those bills and continue the advocacy throughout the year. So it's always something that's, a back burner thing. I check on it every day. Can I send an email today? Can I submit some testimony today? Do I do it on behalf of the commission? Do I do it as a constituent to my state rep or state senator? So that's always something that is sitting on the back of my mind. What can I do today for that? And at the same time, the short-term goals and priorities are what events can we do? What listening session can we do? We're actually working on one now that we want to do for April, which will combine both. It's going to be at a legislative breakfast. So that event, we'll invite all of our Plymouth County legislators to come have breakfast and talk with us. And we're also going to invite women and girls from the county so they can speak, hopefully directly with their elected officials. Hopefully everybody can come so we can have that dialogue.
Oh, I love that. That's awesome. And that's perfect segue into kind of how do people get involved with the commission, with the work that you do? Obviously, you have your events and things like that, but how can people be an extension of the commission? How can they get their voices heard?
Yeah. So the best thing that they can do is attend listening sessions and share their challenges and share their input. And, maybe they have suggestions, come to those events. We actually have one coming up in March 24th. I'm going to give a little pitch for this. March 24th, 6 to 8 p.m. at Massasoit Community College in Brockton. It'll be hybrid. It'll be in person and via Zoom. So I have a long URL that I could give to you, or people can go to masscsw.org/event, and they can find more about that listening session there. In terms of volunteers, we are a state-run group. So everybody who is on our commission has been appointed. We don't accept volunteers like another organization would. So coming into our events and participating, that's where you provide the most value to us. If you want to join a commission, we have a rolling application process. So when a vacancy opens, commissions interview people who have submitted applications. So that's something, if this sounds like a role that you would like, put your name in, submit the application. At some point, you will get a call to say, are you still interested? We have an opening. If anyone's interested in becoming a commissioner, whether they live in Plymouth County or a different region, they can learn more and apply at the same website, masscsw.org. There's an online application.
Oh, perfect. There. How long are your terms?
It depends. They're staggered so that everybody's term ends at the same time. I was just reappointed for a 3-year term. My previous term had been 2 years. So there's 1-year terms, 2 years, 3 years.
Cool. So people can get involved at their level depending on when things come open and if they're accepted, obviously, or appointed, I should say.
This might be getting too much into the weeds, but if somebody leaves midterm, they might have 1 year left on their term. So the person refilling that spot would have 1 year, and then at the end of that term, an opportunity to be invited back.
Oh, cool. So I think as we think about Women's History Month, both statewide and locally, what does this commission work mean to you personally?
Personally, It's about ensuring women and girls have the resources they need and that they aren't struggling personally and professionally and that they succeed in life. It's hard being a woman. I'm sure you know this. We fought for decades for the rights we have, and every day it feels like someone wants to take those rights away. I don't want to let that happen. We can't let that happen. But not only that, we need to keep pushing. We need to keep advancing women and work to improve equity. And it's not just for women,
Yes.
but it's for everybody. Because when we do this, our entire society is better. Our economy is better. We're such a key part of this economy. So that's why I keep doing what I'm doing. That's why I'm involved in this.
It's just about moving our world forward, pulling people up. That is the important piece. As long as when women are elevated, so are men, so are children. So, it doesn't matter your gender. It's just making sure that nobody is left behind. And that's the overall goal that everyone's trying to get at. These subjects are brought up, but just because it's the Plymouth County status of women doesn't mean that no men is impacted by human trafficking. These are just important topics that just happen to be women's issues in some way, but men are also impacted by that. And men are impacted by maternal health. Like, no matter what you do, the whole world is impacted by what happens with women.
Absolutely. And like with the Black maternal health panel that we had, but having that father there, his story was very impactful.
It's a lot, but I know you have a busy day and I don't want to keep you over your time. So I appreciate you for being here. But just one more question I think is always important for a takeaway is, the biggest part of this podcast is really getting people involved, getting people, whether it's involved with you or other organizations, just thinking about local civic involvement. And so if you could leave our listeners with one takeaway on the importance of local civic engagement in advancing equity and the opportunities for women, what would you leave them with?
I would say
it's a big question. I'm sorry.
It is a big question. I was just trying to, because I was on a student podcast and she asked me a similar question. If you want things to be better, if you want change, join one of those groups. People in my world, there's usually like 5 people doing almost all the work in each committee that I'm in. We get tired. We have our own ideas. We've been using the same thing. If you have new ideas, if you want to get involved, join and stay there because we will be happy to let you take on some of it. That's how you can make change for the group or the issue that you're passionate about.
And I think in times like we are living through and people sometimes feel nervous or scared or however it is that they're responding to things, focusing on what your passion is, regardless if it's not women's equity, if it's environment, if it's, medical, whatever it might be, finding that lane and really putting your soul and your time into it. And that I think really does help people get involved and make a difference. And you don't make difference when you're worrying. I mean, you can, but you're really moving it forward and we're doing the work together and making things better. And I'm just grateful that you were able to be here today. Thank you so much, Michelle Davidson, for being on this podcast. And thank you so much. Thank you. The work you do as chair of the Plymouth County Commission on the Status of Women is so important. And I'm just so grateful we were able to highlight the important work happening right here in Plymouth County, listening to our residents, elevating local voices, and ensuring that the needs of women and girls inform decisions at every level of government. And a special thank you to Representative Christine Barber for helping us reflect on 50 years of the impact of the Massachusetts Caucus of Women Legislators, and for walking us through how caucuses function, why they matter, and how collaborating women legislators continues to shape meaningful policy at the State House. I hope today's discussion has given our listeners a deeper understanding of how leadership at the State House and the local level work together, from Beacon Hill to all 351 communities across the Commonwealth, to build opportunity, representation, and progress. Women's History Month is not only about honoring the past, but it's about recognizing the work happening right now and the responsibility we all share in continuing that progress. So thank you for listening to Legislative Lens, People and Policy. I'm State Representative Michelle Badger. Make sure to stay updated on what we're doing between now and our next podcast on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, YouTube, and Blue Sky. You can also reach us directly at michelle.badger@mahouse.gov with questions or ideas for future episodes. Thank you for tuning in. Take care and have a great day.